Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for joining us again on the main stage. I am joined by Hymans Robertson now, and you've got three lovely ladies to give you a insight into the business, just like we have with our other partners today. So I'm going to hand you over. Ladies, over to you.
Thanks very much, James. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're all having a really good day. As James said, we're from Hymans Robertson. So it's myself, Victoria Panormo, Alessandra, Santiago, and Shani's with us as well. We're going to focus on primarily how we've got to where we've got to for you today. And we are from Hymans Robertson. So who are Hymans Robertson? That would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? Hymans Robertson are 100 years old. We're celebrating this year. We are celebrating our 100th birthday, and we are a consultancy firm offering our clients innovative ways and interesting ways to solve their problems that they have in principally employee benefits. So we look at things like pensions and investments, benefits, risk consulting. And Shani's put this slide up on the screen here, which is what we show the market in terms of what we do. So we split our firm up, as you can see on the screen. We've got terms that you may be already familiar with. So there's actuarial parts of our practice. There's also investment, TPA. Our industry loves, kind of initials for everything. We're going to put it on everything. So third-party administrators. We've got a few more on there. We can probably guess the acronym game at the end if you want. But essentially, that is what we do. This is a really good way of encompassing what we do. And the people that we've presented to you today, myself, Victoria, I've been with Hymans nearly 2 years. Alessandra has been with Hymans just over 2 years, and Shani's been with Hymans since she left university. So hopefully you'll get a wide range of views, and we'll be more than happy to take any questions as we go through. So hand over to you, I think, Shani, first of all.
Yeah, great. So we're going to take it in turns to kind of talk through our career paths, as Victoria said. We're happy to take I'm happy to take any questions as you go. If you want to pop anything in the chat box, I'll try and pick it up. But as James said at the start, we will leave some time at the end for any additional questions. So if anything comes to mind once I finish talking, feel free to ask a question there as well. So we talked about where we work in the business, and Victoria mentioned that I've been at Hymans since I was a graduate. So I've just actually celebrated my 14th anniversary with the firm. And I thought I'd talk a little bit, because unlike the others, I started my career at Hymans. I thought I'd talk a little bit about that graduate process, and then talk about the role that I'm doing today. So when I'm probably quite unusual in that when I was still at high school, I knew I wanted to be an actuary. By that point, I'd already done some work experience in the industry, and I had chosen my university degree based on the fact that I wanted to be an actuary. So I'm quite an abnormal person in that sense. And many of you will be sitting there today going, I have no idea what I want to do before I joined university. So I applied to lots of firms, had quite a few offers, and I chose Hymans really because the values which came through when I attended my assessment day. So that our values are to be friendly, partnering, confident, and straightforward. I felt very welcomed. There was definitely a buzz in the office when I first attended that day, and they had a really structured graduate induction program. So we had our first 2 weeks was a blend of training, meeting all the graduates around the rest of the firm, and doing some client work from day one as well. So it was a really good mix in joining. Everyone was really super helpful when I joined. Even though they knew I had some experience from my degree, they wanted to check my knowledge and understanding before they sort of passed on work to me. And everyone was really supportive and encouraging in going through that process. So that was great. And over time, that role's evolved. Very early on, I got exposure to clients. I had some really good clients who were going through some interesting activity, and people were happy to bring me along. I also quite unusually had quite good relationships with some of our firm's suppliers, so I headed up part of the operations of our practice, which meant that we had clients ourselves, and I'd have to do some relationship meetings with one of our suppliers for that as well. So that then led on, and I grew more experience in the field and qualified as an actuary. It's probably worth saying, if you don't know already, that to be a qualified actuary, you have to take a number of exams, and you become a member of another acronym, the IFOA, which is the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. So having done that, I then broadened out from doing sort of calculation work and the more sort of technical aspects of the role to do more around some of the aspects that are covered here. So governance and compliance work, but also I spend quite a bit of my time doing networking and winning work for the business. I'll pause there before I go on to some of these, because we've had a question in around how much did I need to know before I start, or could you come in with no knowledge of what an actuary is? And I think that's a really good point to make, because whilst I did know a lot about it and I did have some prior knowledge, that is not the case. We absolutely appreciate that those at university quite often don't know what they want to do next, and we recruit from a wide range of degrees as well. So you don't have to have maths or economics. We've taken on graduates who've got geography degrees, English degrees, and have never heard of an actuary and are coming in going, what's this all about? So absolutely, we take people from a broad range of backgrounds, and the training program that I talked about at the start is intended to give you that overview of what we do as a business. As part of the actuary exams, you then learn more about the role, and you have to have at least 3 years experience before you can qualify. So in that time, you'll be learning generally. It's also worth saying we've got great support, training, learning and development on the job. So one, I guess I put it here, training and professionalism on my slide. I spend a good amount of my time doing continuous professional development. So at least every 2 months, I attend a 2-hour meeting where we cover technical topics and we chat and debate. But certainly as part of our graduate training program, there's also an ongoing training program. So it's not just those first 2 weeks, you get continued support all the way through. So I'm going to just say a little bit about myself, and there's another question that's come in, but we might try and cover that at the end and get the other two's views on that as well. So at the moment, I split my role between these four areas. So a lot of the work that we do as pensions actuaries, which is very different to the role that Alessandra and Victoria do, is around strategic funding and management of risk. So that's where we apply our maths and economic skills. And here we're looking at what we call defined benefit pension schemes, and we're looking at how we make sure that those pension schemes have enough money, or accumulating enough money to pay members' benefits when they come into payment. And Alessandra will talk a little bit more about that investment process as well. So that can be quite technical in nature, but the bit I really like about that is as you evolve through your career, you start off doing a lot of the calculations and the technical work, and that grows into more of the consulting and the strategic advice for clients. So attending meetings, presenting the summary of those results, and helping our clients to understand the risks that they're running. Pensions is a heavily regulated area, so unfortunately another part of our role is understanding the reams of regulation and the compliance that's needed, and also just good governance. So anyone who's familiar with running a company will know that companies have to have corporate governance structures, and in the same way our clients who are trustees of pension schemes will also have to have good governance requirements. So we support them in putting those frameworks in place, managing their risks, and keeping a monitoring and keeping an eye on those as well. And then the last one that I'll focus on, because I've already said a little bit about training, is networking and winning new work. So I spend quite a lot of my time not only focusing on our existing clients, but thinking about how we can win and build new clients for the future. So that involves some commercial relationship management roles. So I work with prospective clients, sharing thoughts and insights on what we're thinking about as a firm, but also making sure that we are giving, well, when we're in our own marketing and publishing, for example, that we're giving them enough airspace in the stuff that we do, inviting them to join our webinars, for example, and collaborating in our publications and marketing. So that's the final area of my role. I just wanted to say a little bit about actuaries and the Institute of Faculties, and in terms of diversity. We, at the moment, as a firm, have 255 members who are actuaries, and 41% of those are women. So there's a fairly good gender balance within that. In terms of how we're distributed into the different areas of the firm that was shown on the last slide, about 63% of those work in our pensions areas of the business. So that's the work that all of us on this call do. And then 13% of those sit in investment, and our investment team is where Alessandra works. We also have one of the acronyms that was on the last page, our IFS, which is our insurance and financial services. And as you might be able to guess, that's when we work with insurance companies to support them as well in our actuarial nature. So I'm conscious I should probably hand over. So I will move on to our next speaker for now.
Thank you. My slide that I've pulled together is more about my journey to where I am today. And so, unlike Shani, I didn't know what I wanted to do when from birth, by the sounds of things. Shani, you wanted to be an actuary, but I didn't know. And I grew up in Wales. I had a state education, and the significance of me mentioning that is because sometimes you find in financial services that you have this quite, I don't know, elitist reputation of taking people from particular school backgrounds or particular universities. And as Shani's already said, that is not what we go for at Hymans. We have people from all sorts of backgrounds, universities, and people who haven't gone to university as well, all sorts of walks of life. So I was educated in Wales. I did my A levels. I loved maths. That's what I knew I liked. I liked maths. So I went to university in Bristol. I went to UWE in Bristol, which, if we're talking about, not taking from the top universities, this university used to be an old polytechnic, as people used to tell me, an old college. But I was doing the subject that I wanted to do. In fact, I did maths and accounting because at that time, that's what I thought I wanted to do. I quite liked it. I was leaning on my strengths, as it were. Somebody on my course got a job doing something with spreadsheets. I thought, oh yeah, all right, maths, Excel, did a bit of work with Excel during my course. I'll go and do that and see what happens. And it happened to be in the defined benefit department of what is now Halifax Bank of Scotland, dealing with pensions. And so I just fell into it, and actually I really liked it. And so I think that my path up until this point is just follow your strengths, follow what you enjoy. And to a certain extent, that's what Shani did, but she knew what she was doing. She was born with a calculator in her hand, by the sounds of things. I got married. I moved to London because, of course, I'm still in Bristol, at the beginning of my story. I've had a family, and the reason I say that in that tone is because, women leaving the workforce to have a period of maternity leave is no longer the kind of the stumbling block that it was. In fact, I've had 2 children during my career, and both very different experiences in terms of maternity leave, but progressively better. And right now, the support that's out there for women returning to the workforce for whatever reason, people returning to the workforce for whatever reason, because we're now in a period of time where men take paternity leave as well, significant amounts. And as if I planned this, there was a child trying to enter the room. Could you give me a minute? Okay. I'll come back down. Yeah, great. That's the 9-year-old. That's the first child. So my experience has been positive. I'm also involved from a people manager perspective and a business development perspective, a recruitment perspective. This is at the heart of it's a really important part of what we do to attract strong senior women into these roles. We need to be able to be in a position to deal with these. I've bought a house and I've moved to Hymans, and you know what? I've enjoyed my career. I haven't been at Hymans for very long, but I know and I can see the difference in this business compared to where I was and other businesses that I know around the industry and how they operate. I can feel the paternal nature of this business. So the people around you are. The people around me are turning into my friends. Okay, so I've only been in this job for a couple of years, but you know, people really care. People are very supportive and collaborative around, not only in my team, but in the business unit and the wider business that I'm in. Everybody is very friendly, and I would give you, I mean, Aon to a certain extent. I'm not here to Aon bash, not at all, because you know I did very well in a 14-year career at Aon as well. But not all consultancies are the same. I think there's very different cultures in lots of different businesses, consultancies around the industry. So I think talking to people who already work for the business is a really good idea. And I'm smiling because I've already had one LinkedIn request from presumably somebody who's in the audience already, because it says that they're at a university. But LinkedIn is a really good way of chatting to people currently in businesses that you might be applying to, and we're all active on LinkedIn. So yeah, I will wait for the barrage of requests later on. That was really all I was going to say. I mean, I can talk to you about, I'm in defined contribution pensions and I'm in that part of the team, and I'm really happy to take any questions about what that means and how that's different to perhaps what Shani and Alessandra do. But for now, for this part, I really wanted to concentrate on, you know, kind of my career path. And I've got that job, I've got that family, and I live in London. So, you know, I've got a life as well, believe it or not. And so, you know, you hear some horror stories about investment banks or lawyers having to work 90 hours a week. You know, that is very rarely happens at Hymans, and if it does, we find that people are intervening and coming to help and fixing problems. I mean, really, that's not how we want to operate our business, because everybody is collaborative and inclusive. So that's all I had to say on that for now.
Okay, so I think it's time for me to share my story now.
Lovely.
So I am Alessandra Santiago. As you can see on this slide, I am from Brazil, and that's actually Rio. So that's where I lived. That was exactly the view I had from where I lived before moving to London. And I started my whole journey without having any idea of what I wanted to do. I really liked maths, but I wasn't sure. Sometimes I wanted to do psychology because I really wanted to understand people's mind, and I was always passionate about people. I ended up deciding to go for a chemical engineering degree. So I studied for 5 years chemical engineering. And at the last year, when I was doing an internship at Coca-Cola on the environmental area of Coca-Cola over 20 years ago, I realized that I wasn't passionate about it. It was something that I found interesting, but you know, I don't want to wake up in the morning and just do the job. I was just like, you know, doing a job, and I wanted to be passionate about something. So something I always enjoyed was investments, but for me it was more in a hobby style, and I decided to take some courses, and I just realized that that's what I wanted to do. So I had some connections in the investment banking industry, some friends that were doing internships, and I just applied to like the most relevant investment bank in Rio, which was the best one in Brazil, because at the time Rio was the center of finance in Brazil. And I was invited for an interview at 6 p.m. one day. And I went there expecting, one interview. And I actually went through 10 interviews on that day, and I left the office at midnight with a job offer at midnight, right? So that tells you a bit of a tone of how things were different back then from where they are today. Because we talk about a lot about diversity now, which is super important, and we must definitely continue to move forward in the right direction. But we are much better off now than we were years ago. And I can tell you that I started working there. In a team. It was a corporate finance team. So we worked on merger and acquisitions. And there were 24 people in that team, 22 men, 2 women. Both women were interns. So this is just to give you a sense of how things were different back then. And nobody thought this was a problem. Actually, it's almost like they were giving opportunities for 2 women, right? The hours were really long. The tone was really tough. It was like if you made a mistake, people would shout at you. It wasn't like today at Hymans, which is the complete opposite. If you make a mistake, everybody tries to help and understand what happens and how we can find a solution. It was a very difficult environment, but I was so passionate about investments that I didn't want to let it go. So I just kind of ignored everything else and kept going and trying to do my best and learn. But at some point, I just thought that wouldn't be compatible with the lifestyle I wanted. So I tried to move. So I moved to asset management. I started working with private equities, which was also extremely interesting. It was super good fun, but it was still very long hours, very challenging environment. So I thought I have to try something different. So years later, I moved to a multifamily office. It was 10-minute walking distance from my house. It was a small team, and I thought, this is going to be great. I had at the time just had a baby, so I thought, 10-minute walking distance, that would be great. I worked there for 2 years, and I worked for more than 2 years, but in 2 years, I remember having thoughts that I had only been able to have lunch at home and see my baby at lunchtime once in 2 years, because workload was so much, everything was so challenging. And I thought, this is just a joke. I'm just pretending to myself I'm having some work-life balance. I'm not in the end, right? So I remember one day that I decided to make a change, real change. And that day was, I had a client. There was an extremely well-succeeded man. He was around 80 at the time. His children were around 50. He had 5 children, and they were discussing the inheritance solutions. And he had created and sold his shares on one of the biggest banks in Brazil, so like extremely wealthy. And I had a conversation with him. At that time, I was pregnant with my second child, and I asked him, how is it to have 5 children? How was it to raise 5 children? Because I'm really struggling with one. I have no idea how I'm going to be able to manage it with 2. And you know what he answered to me? He answered, I have no idea. I didn't see my children grow up. I don't have any memories of my children growing up. I only worked. At that day, I decided that this was not what I wanted for me. No matter how much I loved investments, it wasn't worthwhile. So I started exploring all the possibilities I could in terms of how could I find a work with investments that I really loved, but at the same time with an environment that was healthy and, compatible with being a person. Because I mentioned having children, but women have different options. Some women decide not to have children, and they still have as much ownership of doing whatever they'd like with their time as anyone else. So it's not because you have a family or not, you're just entitled to do whatever you'd like. And I just decided I would do something different. So I figured out that there was a pension fund. There was a very big pension fund in Brazil that was recruiting an equity analyst. And with my background on private equities, I thought I could do the role really well. And it was a very different environment, a lot longer term, compatible with, it wasn't short term trying to deliver results every minute. It was more long term thinking. And I said, okay, I want to, let me do some research. And while I was doing research, I figured out the org chart from that place seemed like Disney World to me. It had equities, it had fixed income, it had macro allocation, it had derivatives, risk management, everything I was interested in. But I spoke with people and they were working like 8 hours a day, right? And I was like, okay, this is reasonable. So it was super far away, 1 hour distance commute from my house. So I left a job that was 10-minute walking distance to a job that was 1 hour by car. But the truth was, and it was, there's a detail. The salary was 40% of what I used to make, right? 40%. I got a 60% reduction. But I just said, nothing is worthwhile not seeing my children grow up. So I went there. It was the best decision I ever made in my life. I had 7 amazing years there, a lot of fun. And I was promoted to portfolio manager, which doubled my salary. So I ended up getting very close to where I was before. And on top of that, I had a DB pension benefits because the pension scheme was still open when I joined. So in the end, it compensated and had great lifestyle. So when I moved to London, and this was because my husband got a job offer that was, incredible for him, and we thought it would be a great way to raise our children, great place to raise our children. I thought, you know what, investment is London is the perfect place if you want to work with investments. So I should just go for it. And then I started looking for jobs and doing some research. And I actually had a friend who was a client of Hymans, and she mentioned to me, you know what, I really enjoy working with them. They're amazing. They're excellent. Why don't you have a conversation with them about this? So I started exploring different options. I was going through many different interviews. And I remember with Hymans, I don't know why, because everybody told me, be careful. Don't speak out like you do. Don't shake your hands. Do this. Otherwise, you never get a job. And at Hymans, I was just myself. I was speaking as usual. And then they made me an offer. And while they made me an offer, they said to me, Alessandra, there's only one condition. We want you to be yourself, right? So if you decide to work for us, we don't want you to change. Don't try to adapt. Don't look around you and just try to follow the model of others. We want you to be yourself. And even though I was going through other processes, they were paying some even more on asset management, I just decided this was what I wanted for me because the values were so aligned to me. It was to work with investments, right? So basically what we do is we do strategic asset allocation for our clients, taking into consideration the whole condition. So this means all their liabilities, the covenant. The covenant is basically how strong the company who does the contributions for the pension fund, how strong the company is. So how reliant the contributions are. So we take all of this into consideration, and then we do the strategic asset allocation, and then we realize, okay, so if we're allocating 30% to equities, 20% to fixed income, 20% to property, whatever it is, how do we do it? Who are the best managers? What type of specific characteristics of the investments we would like for the client to achieve their objectives? So it was super interesting, the work, but at the same time, it was super compatible to my lifestyle. So I can tell you, I have 2 children. I went to all the meetings since I joined Hymans, which was a bit more than Victoria said. It was 3 years and a bit ago. So I went to all the meetings, parents' meetings at school. I love playing tennis, for example. I'm able to play tennis multiple times a week. Well, you can see I moved to Wimbledon, right? I'm not sure if it was a coincidence or not, but anyway, that's just a picture, just for you to know a bit a little bit more about me. And the most interesting thing for me about working at Hymans is that first, the values are amazing. People are super collaborative. It's a very, very healthy environment. But at the same time, you have a lot of autonomy to guide your career. So if you start in investments and later on you figure out you'd like to do something else, there is this possibility. If you start working on, as an actuary and you want to move elsewhere, you can do that. So what I'm showing on the right-hand side of this slide is that actually what I started doing as well in parallel to being investment consultant is being a team leader. And this is something I'm actually absolutely passionate about, because I was always interested in people. As I mentioned, I was even considering doing psychologist as a uni degree. And I have my own challenges. I'm not saying here, and when we talked about this inspirational women, we were like, okay, we're just real people, right? Trying to do our best, trying to achieve our results. So, and I'm sure all of you who are listening to us have your great potential to do whatever you'd like. So as a team leader, I can do something that I love, which is try to match people's potentials, people's strengths, people's interests with the opportunities in the business. So I'm always trying to understand where are people's strengths and trying to put them in the right places, because all of us have our challenges, all of us have our strengths, and it's just a matter of matching things up. So yeah, I'm super grateful for this opportunity. I'm absolutely happy where I am right now. And I know one of the challenges we have at the moment with the number of women we have in investments at Hymans is because we have more men than women. Even though we have many women, but the challenge is many women don't apply to our investment roles. Most women apply to actuarial roles, and I think some women are a bit scared. They think investments may be, as I mentioned at the start of my career, and I can guarantee to you it's not. There is plenty of opportunity to have a good work-life balance and be happy and work with something as interesting and challenging as investments.
Thanks, Alessandra. I think we're going to have to move on though, just because we're really tight on time now. Our final slide was really going to focus on diversity and inclusion, and I know somebody has asked a question about that. I have actually dropped into the chat box a link to our D&I site, so you can read all about our vision, our purpose, and what we're going to do. But I'll quickly spend 60 seconds talking to this before Nisha's going to try and get some questions. So we absolutely focus on diversity and inclusion. As Victoria said, it's our 100th birthday, and every quarter we're taking an opportunity to spotlight on something we do and care about as a business. And this quarter is about diversity and inclusion. We actually have an event coming up at the end of this month that's going to explore how we can get more diverse people into the pensions industry and financial services. We have 4 areas where we are focusing as a firm, but that doesn't mean these are the only areas of focus. We have networking groups who cover not only these areas, but we also look at, I'm trying to think what's not on here, race. We have something on faith. And we also have something on disability and various other aspects of diversity that aren't captured here. But we truly believe that where we want to get to as a firm is that we reflect the UK population, so that when you're sat at work and you're looking around the office and you're interacting with your colleagues, you feel like you're looking and interacting with those that you come across in your normal walk of life as well. So that's really important to us as a business. We're really happy to say that we're close to being there on a lot of these, and really it's about creating role models and having more people that you can feel that you as particularly coming as a graduate, there's people that you can look to and say, actually, I can be myself in the way that Alessandra said. I don't need to try and mold myself into what else I see around me. So we'll put some information here. I put some more in the chat box, and I'll probably have to leave it there, I'm afraid.
Oh, hello, and thank you so much for that really insightful presentation. I think you're very inspirational, and you've got different journeys of how you got to where you are today, and that's brilliant. So thank you very much for that. So I've been looking at all the questions coming in, and I'm just conscious of the time, so I've probably got time for 2 questions, we can wrap up there. But the first one is, so a lot of the listeners on this call are students and probably think about what to do. Have you got any advice for someone thinking of looking to a career in financial services at all? And that can be to anyone.
A really quick bit of advice from me, besides stalking people on LinkedIn and having a look at what other people have done and how they've progressed their career and what they do. It's a really good way. I've got a few more requests in now, by the way. But another good way is to try and get experience. So, you know, work experience is not, I mean, when I did work experience when I was at school, it was in a bank doing some photocopying and I hated it. But work experience is very different now, especially at Hymans, where we structure a plan for you. You really get to know what a job is like. And by the time you've finished your work experience, you have an idea of what it might be like to work for that company and in that industry. So really important just to get some experience if you can.
That's brilliant. And another question is there opportunities for progression at Hymans, especially for female candidates? Again, anyone?
Definitely a lot. Yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of
I think. I mean, yeah.
Go ahead, Shani.
I was just going to say, all of us here have not only just sort of carried on in our day-to-day roles, but have taken on various opportunities. So, you know, for example, Victoria presents podcasts. Alessandra outlined that she's a team leader. I get involved in heading up one of our firm's initiatives, and all of those things are kind of outside of our ordinary job opportunities. Quite a lot of them we have to apply for and win those opportunities. And I'd say that sometimes as a woman, we might need more encouragement sometimes to go forward for a role, because we think, oh, we wouldn't get that. And I'd encourage everyone to just, you know, if you're unsure, at least speak up about it, because the amount of times I've said, oh, I wish I'd told my people manager I wanted to do that, because if I had told them, they would have encouraged me and got me there sooner, rather than waiting to see somebody else got it and you think, oh, but I could have done that if they could do that. So I just encourage you to be bold and go for those opportunities. But absolutely, it's an environment where we want to promote the 4 things that we've got on this slide here.
We have a number of women who are partners in the firm. So, you know, they have gone all the way through their development. So, and we're still developing, right? There's plenty of opportunity for us, for the grads joining, for everyone, women, men, you know, all sorts of, you know, types of people. So that's what we believe is in the individual, what they can achieve, and support them in that direction.
Brilliant. Oh, unfortunately, that brings us to an end. We've just run out of time. But as Victoria said, please add you on LinkedIn, and you can chat away there and ask all the questions. But I just want to say a huge thank you for all your insights. That was really inspiring. So have a lovely afternoon, and we shall speak soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.